Now, E4G live show every month. As always, we are here with a guest. This month, I'm very thrilled, to be fair, because the guest is really important, and it's something that I'm caring a lot about in last few months. We are talking about the future. And as you know, I'm from Sicily, and it's a topic that for us it's quite delicate. It's a land without future. There are many lands without future around the world right now. We can try to give a different perspective today with Riel Miller. He's a senior fellow at the École des Ponts in France Business School, and he mainly also it was the former head of foresight at UNESCO, and he developed a method and, let's say, a stream of contents and of studies totally oriented to the future. So as usual, I remember you the format, 10 to 15 minutes, our guest is going to have the floor, and then it's Q&A. So enjoy your time, and thank you, Riel, for being here with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be on this channel with you and to be part of the work that you're doing that's attempting to tackle, I think, issues that are of great emotional importance. We're dealing with questions that are that weigh on our emotions, that weigh on our motivation, that weigh on our hope. In other words, it's a time when the sense of the future has, for many reasons, been disrupted, and the sense of the future has, in some ways, been taken away. And humans can't function without a future. Probably everybody listening will recall The Matrix, the films, and the argument that if we can't imagine our lives and be part of even if it's a virtual reality, we can't function. And having the future in our lives in a way that we feel is meaningful is crucial for humans. And today we're in a context where climate extinction, where the fragility displayed by the pandemic, where the sense that that war is ever present, because of course it hasn't gone away at all. There are many parts of the world where war has been rampant and horrific on an ongoing basis, as we all know. So our species is I think rightfully uncomfortable and feeling to a certain extent the pain of not being able to imagine futures that are hopeful or positive. But what I've discovered over a long career now of working with people to think about the future and working with them all around the world is that some of this discomfort is because we start from an impossible place, meaning we cast our role and we engage our imagination in such a way that we think we're doing, in some senses, routine activities. In some ways, it's like preparing, going shopping to prepare for dinner, or thinking about a vacation and planning the vacation, or planning something at work, or planning something in a city. We take the future and we try to control it, and we try to simplify it. We take basically the anticipatory systems of the child, which are anticipatory systems that are very basic. If I touch the stove and it's hot, I will get burned. So I anticipate the danger after I've learned. I cry, there's a baby, to get fed because that's worked before. When I cross the street, I look as a child to make sure I don't get hit by a car, etc. So we have these anticipatory systems and processes very deeply embedded in who we are and what we do, and we use our imagination to make those anticipatory systems function. But those are very inadequate anticipatory systems for the world we live in, because the world we live in is characterized by creativity. In other words, the past does not tell us what will happen in the future. The past can be used to imagine the future, but using the past to imagine the future is also a way to get trapped. If, when I'm growing up, and I look to the future and I say, I want to be like Big Brother, Big Sister. I want to be like a hero. And then I say, I will imitate them and I will converge and I will try to catch up to them. We're using the future, we're imagining the future, but we're doing it in ways that we're already familiar with and on the basis of past experiences of other people. Of course, you reach a moment as you become older and more experienced, where you realize that you are your own person and you can't really be happy or satisfied if you are like the other person, and that catching up and converging is not sufficient. The case I'm making here is that we've trapped ourselves in an approach to the future which really limits the ability to use our imagination. And it limits the ability to use the imagination because it pushes us to look for prediction, for certainty, for the desirable future with a motivation related to creating or controlling that future. And this is really a formula for disappointment and for anxiety, because we can't control the future. And humanity, in almost every major expression in the communities, whether it's the Great Wall of China or the pyramid in Egypt or the Colosseum in Rome or the pyramids in Yucatan, we've been trying to impose ourselves on the future. You could call it colonizing tomorrow. And this idea of colonizing tomorrow has colonized our images of the future as well. And so we work in this kind of strange land, strange context, where we have responsibility for something that we can't actually control. And I think partly that leads us into these dead ends that we find we're in today, meaning conquest. You imagine the future, and you imagine the future of greater, imperial, bigger, whatever. And you think about conquering the future. And you think of your success as conquering your competitors or moving up the status system. We end up with this series of relationships to the world around us, including the proposition, for instance, which seems absurd now, of course, is that take viruses. We know perfectly well that viruses have always coexisted with humans, that we don't control viruses, that we can't avoid pandemics, and that the context always makes that unique. The way in which the viruses spread at one point in time is not the same as the way viruses spread at another. But did we pay any attention to the fact that we are part of this world? Did we respect viruses? No. Mass tourism, global supply chains, collective health conditions, which we paid no attention to. It's an arrogant, pretentious position. And that arrogance and pretension makes it difficult and makes us feel a sense of failure. And then we get resentful and angry. And so today's toxic mixture of fragmentation, resentment, fear, deep anxiety about the future, and in that sense, an anxiety about anything that disrupts us, becomes really intolerable. And I would say that this is a symptom of the failure to cultivate our capacity to anticipate. And let me just make the comparison here. So futures literacy and is a capability. It's not a technique or method. It's a capability that everybody can access. And futures literacy rests on an understanding of anticipatory systems and processes. Now, we're all familiar with reading and writing, and we all understand that you scaffold, you build reading and writing on top of something that's very familiar, being able to speak. Language is the clue, is the starting point for reading and writing. Well, anticipation, every day that you use all the time, but that you take for granted and you don't notice, the anticipatory systems and processes that humans use constantly, is the point of departure for developing futures literacy, for understanding that there are very different kinds of futures, and that understanding the future only as an instrument, a tool to predict and conquer and colonize and control the future is really to blind us to the fact that the past is inadequate for understanding the present. The present is rich with emergence. The present is rich with novelty. And if I only look for those aspects of the present that are based on the dictionaries, the words, the experiences of the past, I will not be able to sense, to capture, to identify, to invent, and to then make sense of what is emergent and novel in the present. So futures literacy is really, to use a metaphor, a way to walk on two legs. And the two legs are different. But hopping around on one leg, the leg of planning and colonizing the future, is limiting and tiring. But developing the other leg that's been atrophied for a very long time is also difficult. And understanding the relationship between the two legs is also something that we need to work on. So futures literacy is really the beginning of a process of developing a capability-based approach to humanity's relationship to the world. And a capability-based approach departs very, in some ways, radically or in a disruptive manner from the goal-oriented, improve the world systems that we're so familiar with. So we take responsibility for improving the existing systems, and we take responsibility for achieving desirable futures. And these become ideological beliefs and systems, and we're dedicated to those. But this way of approaching the world, and I'll end on this point, to me is what has set us up, has created the situation where climate extinction is something that we're confronting. In other words, we're in a world today where we don't have the capacity to respect the world around us because we think that we're superior. We think that we have to control the future, and by playing that kind of role, we actually generate the fragility, the brittleness, and the impossible situation for our own societies, our own communities, where we're supposed to be able to rule the universe. And I think that it's that fundamental change, which is not dissimilar in some ways to the transition that we've already experienced from societies that could not read and write, illiterate societies, to societies where people could read and write. And I can imagine, but it's just a scenario, a world in which, by becoming futures literate, humanity changes its relationship to the world around us and to each other. And we begin to escape from the fears and the imperatives of conquest and oppression and reproducing the past, such that we can begin to live in, I'll use a word advisedly, because it's not a static concept, but in much greater harmony with the universe that we live in.
Thank you very much. Now I should be popped back in the big screen. There, yeah. All right. Riel, thank you very much. A lot of points. I mean, I was here with my notebook. I wouldn't know where to start, but yeah, actually, I do. So first things first. The last point that you touched about controlling the climate, about the idea of conquering the future and not respecting the current world, and this idea of reproducing the past. I'd like to start from there, but I'm gonna put something into brackets, just a little announcement to the audience. Respecting to climate change, with respect to climate change, a partner of us, Tridom, which is a company that does reforestation, is donating a forest of 100 trees in occasion of this little event. It's a symbol. Of course, we know that offsetting is not the solution for everything, but let's say that a tree could be a symbol of hope for every people that actually, all the people that care about the future. And I think that planting a tree is a symbol of thinking about the future. Maybe it's a little bit rhetoric, a little bit populist, but it could work. I remember my grandfather used to say that in Sicily here, we plant lemons and oranges for our sons and olives for our nephews, because they take a long time to grow up. So it's a way, in a different way, but to think also about the future. So thank you, Tridom. You're gonna find a link to earn your tree, let's say. So all the people here will find this link. So let's get back to our talk and our chat. Let's be a little bit academic again. So how do we relate the possibility of being sustainable in the future? Because of course you said we are conquering the future. We are trying to reproduce the past. We are seeing this also with the war in Ukraine. It's sort of an anachronistic situation that nobody could indeed imagine. If we were thinking about the future 10, 20 years ago, we would not imagine probably a war in Ukraine. Maybe someone would have. So could it, now of course I don't want to talk about the war, but in these kind of dramatic scenarios, how do we prevent them? How can we forecast them, let's say?
Look, we had an exchange before this event where we talked about designing and sustainability and all. And my feeling really is that we have this immense challenge to recognize that we can't design or plan. I think a net zero world, I think a world without war will not be designed. It will not be by the genius of some plan or some manifesto. It's really a question of, I think, becoming much more comfortable with the richness, the diversity and novelty, but also to be able to move away from a huge bias towards path dependency. In other words, our whole way of functioning, surviving, design, understanding our security, our efforts to design secure systems, it overwhelms the way we live. And it sounds strange and counterintuitive to say, become more open to experimentation, become more open to what is happening without us making plans or trying to do it on purpose. In other words, rebalance our relationship to continuity and path dependency with more improvisation and spontaneity, more appreciation of novelty. And let me just say that, and this is not anything that I can predict, but if we become more able to name what could not be named yesterday, more open to things that were not in the past, we can become more comfortable with difference. Becoming more comfortable with difference, cultivating creativity and differentiation is a way to enhance diversification. Diversification from an evolutionary perspective is a very positive strategy. Diversification means that certain things will die, certain things will fail, and it means that certain things will succeed that are not the best, but they were just lucky. or they were just in the right place at the right time. So what this all means is that we're not controlling or designing. We are part of this universe. And it sounds kind of like resigning yourself. It sounds like being passive. It sounds like, but I must control the future because climate's going to be changing. But I think that the underlying all of that is, how do we construct our relationship to life, to meaning? What is the way we're living? And this is not something that will happen overnight, of course, and it's not something that means we all of a sudden need to start hopping on one leg. I'm not making the argument for just one leg, but we need to be able to use two legs and to find a relationship between the two legs that I think puts us in life rather than controlling life.
In the meanwhile, I was listening to you, and my eye was on the side corner because we are receiving some comments. Before moving to the audience, I would like to ask one last question on my side, and I would like to take up a little part of your UNESCO research of 2013. There, I read that including utopias deemed unrealistic but based on projecting yesterday's value on tomorrow, the people that were participating to a workshop eventually, or to a study, they were unable to get their imaginations into gear. So what I also realized in my experience is that especially adults, they struggle a lot in thinking about the future to be different from the present. And I'm gonna give you a little, a little example. We were talking about the future in a small town here in the province of Syracuse in Sicily, a town that is quite controversial. It used to be an agricultural place, but now a lot of also organized crime. So not the best place to live, let's say, but with a lot of potential. And there is this organization of youth that is trying to do something, and they asked for our support to try to think about something. And we were trying to hypothesize, let's say, how their city could be in the next future, let's say, thanks to their action and the involvement of the community. And one of the young girls that, she's a literate 26, 27 girl, excellent professional, working there, said that she was thinking about cycling lanes, for bicycles in her city in 2050. And say, okay, guys, it's not to criticize, but we should think about them now. 2050, it's different. It's far from now. So she was thinking about the future as something she would desire right now, let's say. And then I linked this comment to a question here from Caterina, asking how is it different to relate the application of anticipation at a single level, at the level of the individual or the collective side of it. So how is it that different?
Thank you. There's a lot of things to explore here, of course, and I see also the question about intergenerational grandchildren. Well, let me start with the question of the individual and social. Well, first of all, I'm not very convinced that the individual really exists. We're social animals, and we're relational, meaning that meaning and the definition of everything around us and ourselves, our own identity, is relational. So it's not as if I'm a monad in the forest, but everybody understands the difference between one cell phone and everybody having a cell phone. Everybody understands the difference between one person being able to read and write, or a small elite, and everybody being able to read and write. In other words, this is what we call changes in the conditions of change. When everybody has a cell phone, the conditions of change have changed. When everybody can read and write, the conditions of change have changed. And when you create organizations and communities that are able to read and write, you can do different things than when they could not. So if you talk about futures literacy, we're talking about a capability, and therefore this is a capability that is relevant to the individual, obviously, because we all think about the future. We all use the future, but it also relates to the community and how the community works on the future together. To go back to your point about what I call poverty of the imagination, if I told you, and you hadn't been doing any exercise, that I want you to run up a mountain, or if I told you I want you to paint a painting like a great artist, you would say, well, excuse me, I haven't done the exercise. I'm not ready. Let me prepare. And so this is planning, of course, but you need to have the skill. A skill requires exercise, requires practice, requires structure. You need to understand your muscles, your body. You need to understand color and geometry. You need to understand the human eye and your own way of thinking. The imagination is the same. In other words,
sorry, what's the best way to teach it?
By doing.
By doing. Okay.
By doing. But the by doing needs to be done in a structure. Mm-hmm. So if I ask you to read poetry, but you don't have the alphabet, it's a bit stupid. So you have to start where people are at. You have to begin with the images that we have in our head. And so there is a tool that we use and that we worked on extensively at UNESCO, but that I've been developing for 30 years. And it's a tool that takes living laboratories and uses action learning, action research as a way for people to explore their own anticipatory systems and processes. And the good news is it's relatively easy, because after you've taught the alphabet to a child and you say, well, tell me something, I want lunch. You say, well, you can write it now. You said it, now you can write it. I want lunch, whatever. And so you understand the practicality of it because it's in your head, but it's also on the paper and you can read it. And this is the same with under our imagination. Today, because we do not have a clear analytical, theoretical framework for understanding conscious human anticipatory systems, we mash everything together and we ask people to learn the alphabet and do poetry at the same time. And they go, huh? What? Never mind. Forget it. I can't do it. Let the expert do it. The astrologer, the let's make the world great again leader, and they throw the future to somebody else. This is a terrible situation. People need to be able to work on the future together. But to do that, we need to understand the different aspects of the future, the different kinds of futures, and why different methods can be used in different ways in different contexts. And every place in the world has its own specific way of using the imagination. The way the story is told, the way fear and hope are constructed, who tells the story, who has the power over images of the future. And you need to be able to take that into account in order to develop the capability. Every community has developed its own singers, its own artists, its own writers. And in the same way, our ability to imagine the future can be as diverse and as rooted in specific histories and places. So it's not going to happen overnight, just the same way that reading and writing did not happen overnight. But in today's world, the 21st century for humans, if we do not recognize that we have a fundamental underdevelopment of a very powerful and crucial capability, which is our imagination, I think we will, continue to suffer the way we are suffering.
So I have here a couple of more, actually a lot of questions. I'm going to join two of them by Mario and Carlos. They both ask basically, how can we focus on the future when we have so many crises in the present? So I really stretch them together, but that's the point.
It's a good question, but it's the wrong question. In other words, you understand how it positions the future? Oh, I missed the train, so my future's bad because I can't get to where I want to go. Well, okay, fine. But the point of the thing is that means that you have many other opportunities, that you have many other things you can do. And that if you miss the train, well, that happens to everybody. And that's the way the world works, because we don't control the world. And so the question becomes, if you want to control the world for your granddaughter or for somebody else, you are in fact saying, I can guess the future and I can impose my view of the future on them, which means I have no confidence in them because I don't think they'll be capable of doing what they need to do. And also, I know better than them. This is bullshit. I'm sorry. You know,
it's fair.
this way of relating to the future and to the future generations is arrogant and ignorant. So we really need to make a profound change here. And this can relate also to the question of development, which I saw was one of the questions, is that this we all need to be like New York, Shanghai, London. We all need to be like Silicon Valley. We all need to be fourth industrial revolution. We all need to be industrial and recreate the industrial nation state everywhere is absurd. It's ridiculous. I mean, for one thing, that was not how the industrial society emerged. Nobody knew what was going on while it was happening. And so we do not design that. And so here's the fundamental challenge: how to let go at a deep level and then apply. And here's where I think it connects to your idea about ethics. You apply your ethics in the present, and it's your application of the ethics in the present that is your gift to the future. Basta. You do not know what the future is going to be. So if you respect the world around you today and you act according to that ethical respect, that is your symbol, your guide, your gift to the future, and it's forever. It's not one generation, 2 generations, 100 generations. It's forever, because that is a way of being in the present.
So, and this applies also to Yahya question about diversity, for instance. And here I'm gonna point out one thing: behaving properly with respect to future generations is behaving properly today. Let's say it's being ethical today. And I remember a book by John Broome, professor at Oxford of moral philosophy, Climate Matters. He was writing also in 2013. And he basically was saying that governments do not have any moral duty with respect to future generations. Because if someone is not born yet, let's say he doesn't have a meter of comparison. Does he have or she have a better world than before or not? They cannot know because they were not here before. So the idea is that to having a better future, the better is with respect to our generations that are living the present now, let's say. So it's a matter of being ethical and sustainable now. And of course, let's say, getting out of the routine, as you said, of delivering the choices to others, delivering the responsibilities to others, and get off it and just concerning about our present. No, let's be ethical for our present in order to have also us a better future. That's what I strongly believe here in also in Ethics for Growth, that we try to work about it.
But we won't know if their version of better is our version of better. So
exactly.
And so and this relates to the conservation question. I think that the question of continuity, durability, legacy, inheritance, I think we have to be very critical of the power relationships that have sustained the elitism of the future as a mechanism to reproduce power structures and oppression. And that our whole kind of system of continuity and legacy and building statues and fame you want to be remembered as a heroic figure, a genius, etc. This whole way of thinking about glory and about continuity is toxic. It's toxic for people who are living now because it sets them up for an impossible situation. It's cliche, but of course, philosophy and many have said, the best thing is to live well now. It's in the texts of so many philosophers over human history. But we have a particular burden, which is, I think, not only do we need to be able to take steps to control the monsters we've created, So we've created many monsters, atomic weapons. We've created radioactive waste. We've created energy dependency, massive energy dependency to do stupid things like wait in traffic. Oh yeah, let's develop these incredible systems so that we can waste the dinosaurs' bones in a traffic jam. I mean, you got to be crazy. I want to organize my life so I will spend time in a subway underground with a lot of other people. Come on. I mean, our whole way of organizing life and living life is I mean, it's absurd. So, but we have this legacy system that we must deal with responsibly, and so clearly we have to be able to address the planning of its demise. Its demise. In other words, this is another crucial part of what's happened to the dominant industrial, developmental, bureaucratic, administrative systems that have been around for millennia, which is we oppose death. The pharaoh was immortal, buried in a tomb and meant to, with all the servants, because they're immortal. What is this idea of immortality? Immortality is the definition of selfishness. It's not generous at all. And so the relationship that we have to the end of things, to death and to birth, needs to be significantly, I mean, in a fundamental way, reconfigured. And this creates the foundation for really thinking about living in a very, very different way.
So I think this is something to be thinking of. So Riel, I don't know how much time do we have, because I think we were supposed to end 10:45, right?
Yes.
So because I mean we still have a lot of questions, but I'm afraid we cannot answer to everything. Also, Katerina typed like 3 more, and she's 2 more. Yeah, she's the sociologist that work with us and that studied you a little bit, actually a lot. And she did a master in Trento in social foresight. So eventually I might try to, if it's okay for you, if there are some unresponded questions, eventually I might mail them to you if you can give like a little bit of answer, if it's not too much of a bother. But I need to be, I mean, I hope my audience can excuse us if the time is over. We cannot steal our guests for the whole day. I would, to be fair, because I would keep up with this conversation for quite a long time. But we need to, let's say, end our broadcast. Claudio, director, he's remembering us to redeem the 3 in freedom. Okay, thank you very much. So, Riel, thank you very much. Yeah, please.
Just one thing, Giuseppe. What I could suggest is that one of the things to do would be to try and initiate a futures literacy laboratory, what we call our living labs. There are quite a few practitioners that can help with that. It's not about learning, to become a foresight planner. It's not really about foresight. It's about futures literacy as a diverse set of capabilities. And through learning by doing, people can become empowered. And they can begin to learn the alphabet and the vocabulary and the distinctions. So what I would encourage people to do is to take the initiative, in the sense of if you're interested in becoming more futures literate, the thing to do is to start, with the alphabet, and start with other people who know how to do it, and to work together to become more futures literate. So I hope that we can look in the future to do that together. It's a collaborative process. It's action learning through collective intelligence. It's very accessible. We've done it everywhere in the world with different groups, from school children to prime ministers. So it's something that everybody can be part of.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to end the broadcast, and eventually we can have a little chat later on if you have 2 spare minutes. But I just wanted to spend 1 minute to thank also the audience for being here with us. A lot of comments. I mean, it was, you can feel the enthusiasm of the people by how many questions they are typing down there, and I know some of them because they're part of the network. I do not know other of them, so I'm very happy that there are more people actually joining our talks and trying to commit to this kind of ideas that are not maybe that spread, but they will be spreading, you know. So thank you very much to everybody, and let's try to do something also with them. Why not? So thank you very much, and see you next month in Ethics